The distress signal came through the quantum relay network at 0347 hours. Galactic Standard Time. Ambassador Cathara of the Zelani Coalition watched the holographic display flicker to life in the emergency council chambers, her elongated fingers trembling as she decoded the desperate message. Please, anyone who receives this transmission, the Vorthak Empire has invaded our homeworld of Zelania Prime. Our defenses have fallen. Billions of innocent lives hang in the balance. We are a peaceful species. We have no military capable of resisting their war machines. They demand our complete surrender and subjugation within 72 hours, or they will begin systematic extermination of our population. We beg any civilized species in the galaxy to help us. This may be our final transmission. The message repeated 3 times before cutting to static. Around the circular chamber, representatives from dozens of species sat in stunned silence. The Vorthak Empire had been expanding aggressively for the past century, consuming smaller civilizations and enslaving their populations. Their military might was legendary, their cruelty unmatched. Most species simply avoided their territory and hoped to remain unnoticed. Council Prime Thalnex, a towering crystalline being from the Keth Confederation, spoke first. The Zelani are indeed a peaceful species. They have contributed much to our scientific understanding of quantum biology. However, we must be realistic about our capabilities against the Vorthak war machine. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The galactic community had grown comfortable with their policy of non-interference. It was safer to let the Vorthak consume distant worlds than risk their own populations in hopeless conflicts. Ambassador Vexili, from the Raptoran flight, spoke next. Her feathered crest fluffed with agitation. The Vorthak fleet numbers in the thousands. Their battle cruisers can crack planets. Even if we combined our fleets, we would be vastly outnumbered. It would be suicide. More voices joined in, each finding reasons why intervention was impossible. The technology gap was too great, the distance too far, the risk too high. As the debate continued, Kithara felt her hope dying. Her people had 3 days to live, and the galaxy was going to watch it happen. Then the chamber doors opened with a soft hiss. The human delegation entered quietly, their soft footsteps barely audible on the crystalline floor. Admiral Sarah Chen led the group, her black uniform simple compared to the elaborate robes and ceremonial armor worn by other species. Behind her walked General Marcus Rodriguez, Captain Elena Vasquez, and Dr. James Wright, head of the Terran Scientific Consortium. Humans were relatively new to the galactic community, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 2 centuries ago. Most species viewed them as primitive but harmless. They were curious about human culture and technology, but few took them seriously in matters of galactic importance. Admiral Chen approached the central podium without fanfare. We received the Zelani distress call. The United Earth Defense Fleet is prepared to respond immediately. A ripple of surprised chatter filled the chamber. Thalnex's crystalline form shimmered with what might have been amusement. Admiral Chen, while we appreciate the sentiment, the humans possess perhaps 200 ships. The Vorthak Empire commands over 3,000 battle cruisers, each the size of a small moon. Your entire fleet would be destroyed before you could engage their advanced scouts. Chen nodded calmly. Our intelligence indicates the Vorthak have deployed approximately 1,200 ships to the Zelania system. Our fleet analysis suggests we can handle those numbers. The chamber erupted in disbelief. Several ambassadors began speaking at once, their voices creating a cacophony of dismay and concern. How could the humans be so naive about the realities of galactic warfare? Ambassador Zintar of the Epsilon Collective, a being that resembled a walking tree, creaked forward. Admiral, perhaps you do not understand the scale of Vorthak military technology. Their ships are equipped with quantum disruptors, plasma cannons capable of melting through any known armor, and shielding that can deflect most weapons in the galaxy. They have conquered 47 star systems in the past century alone. We understand perfectly, Dr. Wright interjected, adjusting his simple glasses. We have been studying Vorthak technology and tactics for the past 50 years. We believe their reputation exceeds their actual capabilities. This statement caused another wave of shocked murmurs. The idea that anyone would willingly study the Vorthak, much less question their military supremacy, seemed incomprehensible to most species. General Rodriguez stepped forward, his weathered face serious. The Zelani have 72 hours. We can reach their system in 60 hours if we depart immediately. Are there any other species willing to assist? The chamber fell silent. After several long moments, Thalnek spoke for the assembly. The Galactic Council cannot endorse what would essentially be a suicide mission. We will not be responsible for the destruction of human civilization. Admiral Chen smiled slightly, though the expression held no warmth. The United Earth Defense Fleet does not require Council approval to defend innocent lives. We came here as a courtesy to offer other species the opportunity to stand with us. She paused, scanning the assembled representatives. However, we will not stand by while billions of innocent beings face extermination. If we must stand alone, so be it. Ambassador Cathara rose from her seat, her voice barely above a whisper. Why? Why would you risk everything for people you have never met? Your species could simply remain in your territory and be safe. Admiral Chen turned to face the Zilani ambassador directly. Because that's what humans do. When someone cries for help, we answer. It's who we are. Captain Vasquez activated a small holographic projector displaying tactical information. The 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Earth Defense Fleets are already mobilizing. Admiral Chen will command from the flagship UES Indomitable. We estimate arrival at Zilania Prime in 58 hours. The implications hit the assembly like a physical blow. The humans were not bluffing. They were actually going to face the Vorthak Empire with their tiny fleet. It was either the bravest or most foolish act in galactic history. As the human delegation prepared to leave, Ambassador Cathara called out desperately, Wait, you don't understand what you're facing. The Vorthak are monsters. They take no prisoners. They show no mercy. If you lose, they will hunt down your homeworld and make an example of your entire species. Admiral Chen paused at the chamber doors and looked back one final time. Ambassador Cathara, I think you're the one who doesn't understand. The Vorthak have never faced humanity before. They're about to learn why that was a mistake. The doors closed behind the human delegation, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. In less than 3 days, they would discover whether human courage was enough to challenge the most feared empire in the galaxy. The UES Indomitable cut through hyperspace at maximum velocity, leading a fleet of 237 human warships toward the Zilania system. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge studying tactical displays that showed enemy positions based on long-range sensor data. Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, their faces grim but determined. Admiral, we're receiving updated intelligence from our deep space reconnaissance drones, reported Commander Lisa Park, the ship's tactical officer. Vorthak fleet composition is as expected. 1,200 vessels, including 47 heavy battlecruisers and 300 destroyer-class ships. They've established a blockade around Zilania Prime and begun orbital bombardment of military installations. General Rodriguez, who had remained aboard the flagship for strategic coordination, studied the enemy formations on the holographic display. They're using standard Vorthak intimidation tactics. Destroy military targets first, then threaten civilian populations to force surrender. It's worked for them for over a century. Dr. Wright looked up from his portable research terminal, where he had been analyzing Vorthak ship designs. The good news is their tactics haven't evolved. They rely purely on overwhelming firepower and psychological warfare. They've never faced an opponent who understands their weaknesses. Captain Elena Vasquez, commanding the escort carrier UES Prometheus, appeared on the main communication screen. Admiral, our fighter squadrons are ready for deployment. All pilots have been briefed on Vorthak ship vulnerabilities. They're eager to engage. Admiral Chen nodded approvingly. Human military doctrine had evolved differently from most galactic civilizations. While other species built larger and larger ships with more powerful weapons, humans had focused on speed, adaptability, and coordinated tactics. Their ships were smaller but faster, their weapons less powerful but more precise, their crews more flexible in adapting to changing battlefield conditions. Time to system entry? Chen asked. 14 hours, 37 minutes, replied the navigation officer. Chen activated the fleet-wide communication system. Throughout the human fleet, thousands of crew members stopped their preparations to listen to their commander. This is Admiral Chen. In 14 hours, we will drop out of hyperspace in the Zilania system. We will face an enemy that has terrorized the galaxy for generations. They believe their reputation makes them invincible. They believe fear is their greatest weapon. They are about to learn otherwise. She paused, looking around the bridge at her crew. Each of you volunteered for this mission. You could have stayed home safe with your families. Instead, you chose to answer the call of people you have never met. of a species that most of the galaxy has already written off as doomed. You chose to stand between innocent lives and those who would destroy them. The Admiral's voice grew stronger. The Vorthak Empire thinks they understand warfare. They build big ships and use brute force. They have never faced human ingenuity, human determination, or human fury when innocents are threatened. Today, they learn what those words really mean. Meanwhile, in the Zalania system, High Commander Vex Thul of the Vorthak Third Conquest Fleet paced the bridge of his flagship, the Destroyer of Worlds. The massive vessel, over 5 kilometers long, bristled with enough firepower to level continents. Around him, the bridge crew monitored the ongoing bombardment of Zalani defensive installations. "Report," Vex Thul demanded, his voice a harsh growl that resonated through his reptilian throat. Sub-Commander Krelax consulted his tactical display. All Zalani military installations have been destroyed. Their orbital defense platforms offered minimal resistance. We detected no ships larger than civilian transports. The planet is completely defenseless. Vex Thul's scaled lips pulled back in what might have been a smile. "Excellent. Have we received their surrender yet?" "No, High Commander. The Zalani government continues to refuse our terms. They appear to be hoping for rescue by other galactic species." A harsh laugh echoed through the bridge. "Foolish creatures. No species in this galaxy has the strength to challenge us. Even if they did, none would risk their own worlds for strangers." He turned to face the main view screen, which showed the blue-green world of Zalania Prime floating peacefully below them. "Begin targeting civilian population centers. Perhaps watching their cities burn will convince them to see reason." Before the order could be carried out, the sensor operator called out urgently, "High Commander, we're detecting hyperspace distortions at the edge of the system. Multiple ships approaching." Vex Thul turned sharply. "How many ships? What species?" "Sensors indicate 237 vessels. Configuration matches human design specifications." The bridge fell silent. Vex Thul stared at the tactical display in disbelief. "Humans? The primitive species from the Outer Rim? Impossible. Their entire fleet could not challenge a single battle group, much less our full conquest fleet." Sub-Commander Krelax nervously adjusted his console. "High Commander, our intelligence reports indicate human ships are technologically inferior. Small vessels with limited firepower. Should we deploy a screening force to destroy them before they can retreat?" Vex Thul considered this. In his 4 decades of conquest, no species had ever willingly engaged Vorthak forces when so vastly outnumbered. The humans must be either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Either way, their destruction would send a clear message to the rest of the galaxy. "No," he decided. "Deploy the entire fleet. I want every ship we have to witness the annihilation of human forces. Let this serve as a lesson to any other species foolish enough to oppose us." Throughout the Vorthak fleet, battle stations sounded. Massive ships began moving into attack formations, their weapons charging with deadly energy. Crew members aboard dozens of vessels prepared for what they expected to be a brief and one-sided battle. On Zalania Prime, Ambassador Cathara stood in the ruins of the Planetary Defense Center, watching long-range sensors track the approaching fleets. Around her, the surviving members of the Zalani government watched in amazement as the human ships dropped out of hyperspace at the system's edge. "They actually came," whispered Prime Minister Veltar, his voice filled with wonder and disbelief. "The humans actually came to help us." Cathara felt tears running down her face. In all her years as a diplomat, she had never seen such courage. The humans had to know they were flying into certain death, yet they came anyway. She activated the emergency broadcast system, sending a message to the approaching human fleet. "Admiral Chen, this is Ambassador Cathara of the Zalani Coalition. We cannot express our gratitude for your courage, but we beg you to reconsider. The Vorthak fleet is massive beyond anything you have faced. Please do not sacrifice your lives for ours. Our people will remember your bravery even if you withdraw now." Admiral Chen's response came back immediately, her voice calm and confident. "Ambassador, we didn't come this far to turn back now. Keep your people safe. We'll handle the Vorthak." As the human fleet formed up for attack, Vex Thul watched from his command center with growing amusement. The human ships were indeed small, barely a fraction the size of his battlecruisers. This would be over quickly. "All ships advance to engagement range," he ordered. "Destroy every human vessel. Leave none alive to tell of their folly." The largest space battle in galactic history was about to begin. The first phase of the battle began exactly as High Commander Vexthul expected. His massive battlecruisers opened fire with plasma cannons that could melt through asteroids, sending streams of superheated energy toward the approaching human fleet. The weapons that had shattered the defenses of 47 star systems now targeted the small human vessels. But something was wrong. The human ships moved like nothing the Vorthak had ever encountered. Instead of advancing in the standard battle lines used by every other species, they scattered in seemingly random patterns, their formations flowing like liquid mercury. The massive plasma bolts designed to destroy large, slow-moving targets passed harmlessly through empty space as human ships danced between them with impossible grace. "What is this?" Vexthul snarled, watching his tactical display in growing confusion. "Why can't our gunners hit them?" Sub-Commander Krelax frantically consulted his instruments. "High Commander, the human ships are using some form of advanced maneuvering system. They're changing direction faster than our targeting computers can track." What the Vorthak didn't understand was that human ships had been designed around a completely different philosophy of warfare. While other species built heavily armored vessels that could absorb punishment, humans had focused on avoiding damage entirely. Their ships used rotating sections to generate artificial gravity, while maintaining incredible maneuverability. Pilots trained in three-dimensional combat from childhood could execute turns that would liquefy the crew of any other species. Admiral Chen watched the enemy fire patterns from the bridge of the Indomitable, her tactical computer analyzing Vorthak weapon systems in real time. "Their targeting algorithms are designed for capital ship engagement," she observed calmly. Dr. Wright was right. They've never adapted to fight smaller, faster vessels. "Enemy fleet is moving to envelop us," reported Commander Park. "Standard Vorthak tactic. They're trying to surround us with superior numbers." "Let them," Chen replied. "Signal all ships. Begin Phase 2. Throughout the human fleet, captain after captain acknowledged the order. The seemingly chaotic movement of human ships suddenly revealed its purpose. They had used their superior speed to position themselves exactly where they needed to be. Captain Vasquez, commanding the carrier Prometheus, launched her fighter squadrons at precisely the right moment. 300 small, fast fighters erupted from human ships like angry hornets from a disturbed nest. The Vorthak had never encountered anything like them. Fighter combat was unknown in galactic warfare. Other species built ships that could survive in the vacuum of space for months or years. The idea of tiny vessels with single pilots operating for only hours at a time seemed impossible. But humans had mastered atmospheric flight before they reached space, and they had never abandoned the concept of air superiority. Lieutenant Maria Santos piloted her fighter, the Damascus Steel, toward a Vorthak destroyer that was attempting to target the human cruiser Manchester. Her ship was barely 20 meters long, a speck compared to the kilometer-long enemy vessel, but it carried weapons specifically designed to exploit Vorthak vulnerabilities. "This is Lightning Squadron," she called over the communication system. "Beginning attack runs on enemy destroyers. Remember, target their sensor arrays first, then their weapon control systems." Dr. Wright's decades of studying Vorthak technology had revealed critical weaknesses. Their ships were powerful but not well designed. Sensor clusters were exposed to provide maximum coverage. Weapon control systems used centralized targeting that could be disrupted. Their shields were designed to stop large projectiles, not swarms of small missiles. Santos dove toward her target, her fighter's engines screaming as she accelerated to attack speed. The destroyer's point defense systems tried to track her, but they were designed to intercept torpedoes and missiles, not fighter craft. She released her payload at point-blank range, 6 precision missiles that struck the ship's sensor array in rapid succession. The Vorthak destroyer was suddenly blind, its massive weapons unable to target anything beyond visual range. Similar attacks were happening throughout the enemy fleet as human fighters swarmed over ships that had no effective defense against them. "High Commander," Vexthul watched his tactical display with growing alarm as ship after ship reported sensor failures and weapon malfunctions. "How are they doing this?" "Our ships are 100 times larger than their fighters. The small craft are too fast for our defensive systems," Krelax reported, his voice tight with stress. "They're targeting specific systems with surgical precision. It's unlike any tactic we've encountered." For the first time in his career, Vexthol felt something he had never experienced in battle: uncertainty. The humans were fighting in a way that made no sense according to everything he knew about galactic warfare. But it was working. All ships focus fire on their capital vessels, he ordered desperately. Ignore the fighters. Destroy their command ships and the small craft will be stranded. But this played directly into Admiral Chen's strategy. As Vorthak ships concentrated their fire on human cruisers and destroyers, they exposed themselves to devastating counterattacks. Human ships were not just faster than their enemies. They were more accurate. The UES Manchester, under attack by 3 Vorthak destroyers, demonstrated human military engineering at its finest. Captain James Morrison watched enemy plasma bolts streak past his ship as his helmsman executed a complex evasive maneuver that would have been impossible in a larger vessel. Target their main power generators, Morrison ordered his weapons officer. Fire when ready. Human weapons technology had evolved along different lines than other species. Instead of building more powerful guns, they had focused on precision and efficiency. The Manchester's main battery consisted of magnetic accelerator cannons that could place projectiles exactly where they needed to go with minimal energy expenditure. 3 tungsten penetrator rounds, each the size of a telephone pole, struck the lead Vorthak destroyer's power core with pinpoint accuracy. The ship's shields flickered and died as its energy systems cascaded into failure. Secondary explosions rippled along its hull as human fighters swarmed in to finish the kill. Throughout the battle zone, similar scenes played out again and again. Vorthak ships designed to overwhelm enemies with brute force found themselves outmaneuvered, outthought, and systematically destroyed by an enemy they had dismissed as primitive. On Zelania Prime, Ambassador Cathara watched the battle through her government's remaining sensors, hardly believing what she was seeing. The mighty Vorthak fleet, which had seemed so invincible just hours before, was being torn apart by the small human force. How is this possible? Prime Minister Veltar whispered beside her. The humans have fewer than 300 ships. The Vorthak have over 1,000. Numbers don't mean everything, Cathara replied, watching another Vorthak battlecruiser explode under concentrated human fire. The humans fight like no species we've ever seen. They're not trying to match the Vorthak's strength. They're using their weaknesses against them. High Commander Vexthol was beginning to understand this as well, but understanding came too late. His fleet was designed to fight other fleets like itself, massive vessels trading devastating blows until one side was destroyed. The humans had brought a completely different kind of war to his doorstep, one his ships and crews were not prepared for. Signal retreat, he finally ordered, his voice heavy with defeat. All ships withdraw to rally point 7, but Admiral Chen had anticipated this as well. As Vorthak ships turned to flee, they found their escape routes blocked by human vessels that had positioned themselves perfectly for this moment. The trap was complete. The Battle of Zelania was about to enter its final phase. High Commander Vexthol stared at his tactical display in disbelief as his retreat routes closed one by one. Human ships had somehow anticipated every possible escape vector, positioning themselves with surgical precision to cut off his fleet's withdrawal. In 40 years of conquest, he had never seen such tactical brilliance. How did they know? He demanded, his voice rising to a roar that echoed through the bridge. How could they possibly predict our retreat patterns? Sub-Commander Kralax worked frantically at his station, trying to find any gap in the human formation. High Commander, they seem to have studied our tactical doctrines extensively. Every standard Vorthak maneuver has been countered before we could execute it. Dr. Wright's research had indeed been thorough. For 50 years, human intelligence services had analyzed every Vorthak battle, studying their patterns, their psychology, their weaknesses. They had built detailed psychological profiles of Vorthak commanders, mapped their tactical preferences, and identified the critical flaws in their military doctrine. Admiral Chen stood calmly on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching as her carefully orchestrated plan reached its conclusion. Signal all ships, she ordered. Begin final assault phase. Target command vessels first. The human fleet moved with coordinated precision that seemed almost telepathic. Ships that had been scattered across the battlefield suddenly converged on key targets with devastating effect. The Vorthak found themselves facing not just superior tactics, but something they had never encountered before: a military force that functioned as a single, unified organism. Captain Morrison of the Manchester led a squadron of 6 cruisers in a direct assault on Vexthul's flagship. The Destroyer of Worlds was massive, bristling with enough firepower to crack a moon, but its very size made it a perfect target for coordinated attack. All ships, focus fire on the command tower, Morrison ordered. Target their bridge systems. Human weapons struck with mathematical precision. Unlike the Vorthak, who relied on overwhelming destructive power, human military doctrine emphasized surgical strikes against critical systems. 6 magnetic accelerator cannons fired in perfect synchronization, their tungsten projectiles converging on a single point of the enemy flagship's bridge structure. The Destroyer of Worlds shuddered as its command center exploded in a cascade of sparks and flame. Emergency lighting flickered throughout the massive vessel as its primary control systems went offline. Vexthul found himself thrown to the deck as his flagship's bridge systems died around him. Smoke filled the command center, while emergency crews struggled to restore basic functions. For the first time in his career, the High Commander faced the possibility of actual defeat. "Damage report," he shouted over the chaos. "Primary command systems are offline," Krellex reported, blood streaming from a gash on his scaled forehead. "We've lost main sensors, fire control, and communication with the fleet. Emergency power only." Through the smoke and sparks, Vexthul could see other Vorthak ships suffering similar fates. Human fighters continued their relentless attacks, systematically dismantling his fleet's combat capability. His vessels were being reduced to floating hulks, their crews trapped inside ships that could no longer fight or flee. Lieutenant Santos, still piloting her fighter Damascus Steel, watched another Vorthak destroyer go dark as her squadron completed their attack run. The enemy ship's weapons fell silent, its engines died, and its lights flickered out. The vessel was still intact, but it was no longer a threat. "Lightning Squadron, this is Control," came Captain Vasquez's voice over the communication system. "Excellent work. Proceed to next target grid." Santos acknowledged the order and turned toward another enemy vessel, but something made her pause. Through her fighter's canopy, she could see escape pods beginning to launch from disabled Vorthak ships. The enemy was abandoning their vessels. "Control, this is Lightning Lead," she called. "Enemy crews are evacuating their ships. Request instructions." The response came not from Captain Vasquez but from Admiral Chen herself. "All units, do not target escape pods. Repeat, do not fire on evacuating personnel. We are here to stop the Vorthak military, not to commit genocide." This order rippled through the human fleet, and many crews found themselves surprised by their admiral's mercy. The Vorthak had a reputation for taking no prisoners, for showing no mercy to defeated enemies. But Admiral Chen was demonstrating a fundamental difference between human and Vorthak military philosophy. On the crippled bridge of the Destroyer of Worlds, Sub-Commander Krellex looked up from his damaged console in amazement. "High Commander, the humans are not firing on our escape pods. They're allowing our crews to evacuate." Vexthul stared at him in confusion. "What? That makes no sense. Why would they show mercy to their enemies?" It was a question that revealed the fundamental difference between the two species. The Vorthak had built their empire on fear and total destruction. They had never encountered an enemy that made distinctions between military targets and helpless personnel. The concept of mercy in warfare was completely alien to them. Admiral Chen opened a communication channel to the Vorthak flagship. Her voice carried clearly through the damaged bridge systems of the Destroyer of Worlds. "High Commander Vexthul, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Fleet. Your military force has been neutralized. Your ships are disabled and your crews are evacuating. I am offering you the opportunity to surrender with honor." Vexthul struggled to his feet, leaning heavily on his damaged command console. Around him, his bridge crew watched in stunned silence. No enemy had ever offered a Vorthak commander the chance to surrender. In their experience, defeat meant death. You would accept our surrender?" Vexthul asked, his voice hoarse with disbelief. "I would," Chen replied. "Your crews will be treated according to galactic conventions for prisoners of war. No harm will come to those who lay down their arms." The concept was so foreign to Vorthak, thinking that Vexthul found himself struggling to understand it. In 4 decades of conquest, he had never taken prisoners. He had never shown mercy. The idea that his enemies would extend such consideration to him was incomprehensible. "Why?" he finally asked. "We came here to destroy an innocent species. We have conquered dozens of worlds. We have enslaved billions. Why would you spare us?" Admiral Chen's response would be recorded in galactic history and studied for generations to come. Because that's what separates us from you, Commander. We fight to protect the innocent, not to dominate them. We use our strength to defend those who cannot defend themselves, not to prey upon the weak. When you surrender, you stop being an enemy and start being a responsibility. That's what it means to be human. Throughout the Vorthak fleet, ship after ship began broadcasting surrender signals. Crews that had expected to die in glorious battle instead found themselves being rescued by the very enemies they had come to destroy. Human rescue ships moved among the disabled Vorthak vessels, taking aboard survivors and providing medical assistance to the wounded. On Zalania Prime, Ambassador Cathara watched the aftermath of the battle with tears streaming down her face. The impossible had happened. The humans had not only defeated the mighty Vorthak fleet, but they had done so while maintaining their principles. They had shown that strength did not require cruelty, that victory did not demand vengeance. Prime Minister Veltar stood beside her, equally moved by what they had witnessed. "The humans have saved our world," he said quietly. "But they've done something even more important. They've shown the galaxy what we could become." As the last Vorthak ship surrendered and human rescue operations continued, word of the battle began to spread throughout the galaxy. The species that had once dismissed humanity as primitive were about to learn a new respect for the warriors from Earth. The Vorthak Empire's reign of terror was ending, and a new chapter in galactic history was about to begin. News of the Battle of Zalania spread through the galaxy faster than light itself. Quantum communication relays carried the impossible story to every corner of civilized space. The mighty Vorthak Third Conquest fleet, 1,200 ships strong, had been completely defeated by fewer than 300 human vessels. The species that had terrorized the galaxy for over a century had been brought to its knees by the supposedly primitive humans. In the Galactic Council chambers, the emergency session that had begun with dismissive concern for human suicide had transformed into something approaching panic. Representatives from dozens of species struggled to process what had happened. Council Prime Thalnex, his crystalline form flickering with agitation, addressed the assembly. The implications of this victory extend far beyond a single battle. If the humans can defeat the Vorthak so decisively, what does that mean for the existing balance of power in the galaxy? Ambassador Vexili of the Raptoran flight paced nervously, her feathered crest bristling with anxiety. "We dismiss them as harmless primitives, but if their military capabilities exceed even the Vorthak Empire, then perhaps we have gravely underestimated human intentions." The fear in the chamber was palpable. For generations, the galactic community had operated under a careful balance of power. Strong species like the Vorthak were avoided and appeased. Weaker species were protected by alliances and treaties. But the humans had just shattered that entire framework by demonstrating military capabilities that defied all previous understanding. Ambassador Zintar of the Epsilon Collective creaked forward, his tree-like form trembling with concern. What if the humans decide to expand their territory? What if they choose to become conquerors themselves? We have no defense against tactics we do not understand. The debate continued for hours, but it was interrupted by an incoming transmission from Admiral Chen. The human commander appeared on the main holographic display, her simple uniform a stark contrast to the elaborate ceremonial garments worn by the council members. "Honored representatives," Admiral Chen began, her voice calm and respectful. "I am transmitting this message to address concerns that may have arisen following our engagement with Vorthak forces. I want to make Earth's position absolutely clear." The chamber fell silent as every ambassador focused on the human admiral's words. "The United Earth Defense Fleet acted solely to protect innocent lives. We have no territorial ambitions beyond our current borders. We seek no conquest, no expansion, no domination over other species. Our intervention in the Zalania system was motivated purely by humanitarian concerns." She paused, allowing her words to sink in before continuing. "However, let me be equally clear about this. The Earth Defense Fleet will respond to any threat against innocent civilians, regardless of who makes that threat or how powerful they believe themselves to be. We will not stand by while the strong prey upon the weak. This is not a threat to peaceful species. This is a promise to those who would harm them." The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. The humans had just announced themselves as the galaxy's new peacekeepers, whether the galaxy wanted them or not. Meanwhile, in the Vorthak home system of Krextor, Emperor Vashkul received news of the disaster with cold fury. The ruler of the Vorthak Empire had built his reign on the foundation of military supremacy. His fleets had never known defeat. His enemies had never dared to resist. "Impossible," he snarled, his massive form towering over the trembling messenger. "Vexthul commands our most powerful fleet. The humans have barely 200 ships in their entire navy." "My emperor," the messenger replied, his voice shaking with terror. "The reports are confirmed by multiple sources. High Commander Vexthul and his surviving crew are in human custody. The Third Conquest Fleet has been completely destroyed or captured." Emperor Vashkel's scaled fist crashed down on his throne's armrest, cracking the solid metal. For 300 years, the Vorthak Empire had expanded unchallenged. No species had dared to resist them directly. The very idea that humans could defeat a full conquest fleet was an insult to everything he represented. "Mobilize the First and Second Imperial Fleets," he commanded. "I will personally lead an armada of 5,000 ships to the human home system. These primitives will learn the price of defying the Vorthak Empire." His military advisors exchanged nervous glances. The Emperor was proposing to launch the largest military operation in Vorthak history against an enemy that had just demonstrated capabilities they didn't understand. "My Emperor," ventured Fleet Admiral Kethmore carefully, "perhaps we should study the humans' tactics before committing our main fleets. If we understood how they defeated the Third Conquest Fleet, we could develop countermeasures." The Emperor's response was swift and violent. His massive claws raked across the Admiral's throat, sending the unfortunate officer crashing to the floor in a pool of his own blood. "Do not question my judgment," Vashkul roared. "The humans defeated one fleet through treachery and trickery. They will not survive the full might of the Vorthak Empire. Prepare for immediate departure." Back in the Zalania system, Admiral Chen was coordinating the massive humanitarian operation that had followed the battle. Human ships worked alongside vessels from grateful Zalani, forces to process thousands of Vorthak prisoners and begin the long task of rebuilding damaged orbital installations. Dr. Wright had established a field research station aboard the captured Vorthak flagship, studying their technology and interrogating prisoners to better understand their military capabilities. What he discovered was both encouraging and deeply troubling. "Admiral," he reported during their daily briefing, "the Vorthak technology is impressive but fundamentally limited. They've focused entirely on raw power rather than efficiency or innovation. Their ships are powerful but inflexible. Their tactics predictable but devastating against conventional opponents." "That's the encouraging part," Chen observed. "What's the troubling news?" "The scale of their military infrastructure is staggering. High Commander Vexthul's forces represented less than 10% of their total fleet strength. The Vorthak Empire commands over 30,000 warships, divided into multiple fleets across their territory." Admiral Chen absorbed this information with her usual calm. "Do you believe they will retaliate?" "Absolutely. Everything we've learned about Vorthak psychology suggests they cannot allow this defeat to stand unanswered. They will come for Earth with everything they have." As if summoned by their conversation, a priority message arrived from Earth Command. General Rodriguez appeared on the communication screen, his face grim. "Admiral, long-range reconnaissance has detected massive fleet movements in Vorthak space. Our intelligence estimates they're mobilizing between 4,000 and 6,000 ships for a direct assault on the Sol system. Expected arrival time is 6 weeks." Admiral Chen nodded slowly. "Understood. What's the status of Earth's defenses?" "All orbital platforms are operational. The home fleet numbers 200 ships. The second and fourth defense fleets are being recalled from patrol duties, which will give us approximately 500 ships total." The numbers were sobering. Even with their tactical advantages, human forces would be outnumbered 10 to 1. The coming battle would determine not just the fate of Earth, but the future direction of galactic civilization. Ambassador Cathara, who had been listening to the human communications with growing alarm, stepped forward. "Admiral Chen, the Zalani Coalition offers whatever assistance we can provide. Our rebuilt fleet is small, but it is yours to command." Similar offers began arriving from other species throughout the galaxy. The Raptoran flight pledged 200 ships. The Epsilon Collective committed their entire defense force. Even some previously neutral species announced their intention to stand with humanity against Vorthak aggression. For the first time in galactic history, dozens of species were uniting against a common threat. The humans had not only defeated the Vorthak, they had inspired others to believe that such defeat was possible. As Admiral Chen prepared her fleet for the journey home, she reflected on the strange turn of events that had brought them to this point. They had come to save the Zilani and found themselves at the center of a galactic revolution. The question now was whether human courage and ingenuity would be enough to survive what was coming. The largest military confrontation in galactic history was about to unfold in humanity's own backyard. The assembled fleet that gathered in the Sol system was unlike anything in galactic history. Over 3,000 ships from 47 different species hung in formation around Earth's orbital defense platforms, their diverse designs creating a tapestry of technology and determination. The humans had not only inspired others to fight, they had given the galaxy hope that tyranny could be defeated. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, studying the massive tactical display that showed friendly and enemy positions throughout the system. The Vorthak Armada was approaching at maximum speed, their formation a dark cloud of destruction that promised to sweep away everything in its path. Final fleet composition report, requested Chen. Commander Park consulted her tactical computer. 600 human vessels, including our newest stealth frigates and the prototype dreadnought Terra's Fury. 200 Zilani ships with upgraded weapons systems. 150 Raptor and attack wings. 300 Epsilon collective defense platforms. The remaining forces represent smaller contingents from allied species. Dr. Wright, now serving as the fleet's chief tactical advisor, highlighted key elements of their defensive strategy. We've positioned the allied fleets according to their individual strengths. The Raptoran wings will provide rapid response capability. The Epsilon collective platforms offer heavy firepower at fixed positions. The Zilani ships have been integrated with our fast attack squadrons. And the enemy? Chen asked. Emperor Vashkel commands personally from his flagship, the Doom of Worlds. Intelligence indicates 5,800 vessels, including their most powerful battle titans. Each Titan-class ship is over 10 kilometers long and carries enough firepower to devastate a planet's surface. The tactical situation was daunting. Despite their growing alliance, the human-led coalition was still outnumbered nearly 2-to-1 by an enemy that had conquered half the galaxy. But Admiral Chen had learned something important during the Battle of Zilania. Numbers alone did not determine victory. Signal all fleet commanders, she ordered. Operation Anvil is now in effect. Throughout the vast Allied armada, captains and commanders received their final instructions. The plan was audacious, relying on perfect coordination between species that had never fought together before. But it was also the only strategy that gave them any chance of victory. Emperor Vashkel approached the Sol system with absolute confidence in his victory. From the command deck of the Doom of Worlds, he could see the pathetic force that awaited him. A few thousand ships against the might of the Vorthak Empire's greatest armada. Warlord Kextal, he addressed his fleet commander, deploy all forces for immediate assault. I want the human homeworld burning within the hour. But as the Vorthak fleet entered the outer system, they encountered the first surprise in Admiral Chen's battle plan. The Allied fleet was not waiting in fixed defensive positions around Earth. Instead, they had dispersed throughout the system, using the orbital mechanics of planets, moons, and asteroid belts to their advantage. What is this? Vashkel demanded as his sensors detected enemy ships scattered across multiple orbital planes. Why are they not defending their homeworld directly? Warlord Kextal studied the tactical displays with growing concern. Emperor, their formation appears chaotic, but our battle computers cannot predict their movement patterns. They seem to be using gravitational effects to enhance their maneuverability. The truth was even more sophisticated than the Vorthak realized. Human military engineers had spent months calculating precise orbital mechanics that would allow their smaller, faster ships to use the solar system itself as a weapon. Planets and moons became gravitational slings that could accelerate ships to incredible velocities. Asteroid belts provided cover and concealment. The space between worlds became a three-dimensional battlefield where human knowledge of their own system provided enormous tactical advantages. Captain Morrison, now commanding the heavy cruiser Manchester's Revenge, led the first attack wave as the Vorthak fleet approached Jupiter's orbit. His squadron had been hiding in the gas giant's radiation shadow, invisible to enemy sensors. All ships begin attack run, he ordered. Target the Emperor's escort vessels. 12 human cruisers burst from concealment. their engines blazing as Jupiter's massive gravity field slung them toward the Vorthak formation at tremendous speed. The Emperor's escorts, massive battle cruisers that had never known defeat, suddenly found themselves under attack by ships moving faster than their weapons could track. The Manchester's Revenge fired a full spread of magnetic accelerator rounds directly into the bridge of a Vorthak battlecruiser. The tungsten projectiles, accelerated by both the ship's weapons and Jupiter's gravitational assist, struck with the force of small asteroids. The enemy vessel's command section simply vanished in a cloud of vaporized metal. Similar attacks erupted throughout the system as Admiral Chen's carefully orchestrated plan unfolded. Zilani ships emerged from the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, their formations coordinated with human tactical computers. Raptoran attack wings dove from high orbital positions, using gravitational wells to achieve impossible attack angles. Epsilon collective platforms, thought to be fixed defensive installations, revealed their true nature as mobile weapons platforms that could reposition using controlled gravitic fields. Emperor Vashkel watched his carefully ordered battle formation dissolve into chaos as enemies appeared from every direction. His massive fleet, designed to overwhelm opponents through superior firepower, found itself unable to bring its weapons to bear effectively against targets that refused to engage in traditional battle lines. "How are they moving so fast?" he roared. "Our ships are more powerful. Our weapons have greater range. Why can we not hit them?" But Admiral Chen had learned from every battle humanity had ever fought. She had studied the naval warfare of Earth's oceans, the aerial combat of atmospheric flight, and the unique challenges of three-dimensional space combat. The result was a tactical doctrine that no other species had even imagined. Lieutenant Santos, now promoted to squadron commander, led her fighter wings in the decisive assault on the Emperor's flagship. The doom of worlds was massive beyond comprehension, a floating city bristling with weapons. But it was also a symbol, and symbols could be destroyed. "All fighters, remember your targets," she called over the communication system. "We're not trying to destroy this ship. We're trying to capture it." The mission was incredibly dangerous. The doom of worlds was protected by defensive systems that could track and destroy incoming missiles with ease. But human fighters were small enough and fast enough to slip through defenses designed for larger threats. Santos led her squadron through a maze of enemy fire, her fighter Damascus steel dancing between plasma bolts that could have vaporized a small moon. Behind her, 300 of humanity's best pilots followed her through the defensive grid toward their target. As the human fighters reached the Emperor's flagship, they released their special payload, boarding pods. Each pod contained a squad of human Marines equipped with the latest combat armor and weapons designed specifically for fighting. Vorthak warriors in close quarters. Emperor Vashkel felt his flagship shudder as dozens of boarding pods attached themselves to his ship's hull. Warning klaxons echoed through the corridors as human soldiers began cutting their way through armor that had never been breached by enemy action. "Impossible," he raged. "No species dares to board a Vorthak command ship." But the humans were not like any species the Vorthak had encountered. Human Marines had trained for decades in close-quarters combat, urban warfare, and boarding actions. They moved through the flagship's corridors like deadly shadows, their advanced armor protecting them from Vorthak weapons, while their own firearms cut down enemy defenders with precision accuracy. Sergeant Major Elena Rodriguez led the assault team toward the Emperor's command center, her rifle blazing as Vorthak warriors tried desperately to stop their advance. The enemies were larger and stronger than humans, but they had never faced soldiers who combined superior technology with centuries of combat experience. "Bridge secured," Rodriguez reported as her team burst into the flagship's command center. "We have the Emperor." Admiral Chen's voice came through her communicator with calm satisfaction. "Excellent work, Sergeant Major. Emperor Vashkel, you are under arrest for crimes against galactic civilization." Throughout the Vorthak fleet, news of the Emperor's capture spread like wildfire. Ships that had fought with fanatical determination suddenly found themselves leaderless and confused. The psychological impact of their leader's defeat began to cascade through their forces. Warlord Kextal, now commanding what remained of the Vorthak fleet, faced an impossible decision. He could continue fighting and watch his forces be systematically destroyed, or he could surrender and face the consequences of defeat. "All ships," he finally broadcast, his voice heavy with resignation, "cease fire and prepare to surrender." The Battle of Seoul was over. The largest military force in galactic history had been defeated by an alliance of species that had learned to fight together for a common cause. The Vorthak Empire's reign of terror had ended not with conquest, but with the capture of its emperor and the surrender of its greatest fleet. As the news spread throughout the galaxy, species that had lived in fear for generations began to hope for a different future. The humans had not only proven that the Vorthak could be defeated, they had shown the galaxy what was possible when courage and principle guided military action. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching as human and allied ships began the massive task of processing thousands of prisoners and securing captured vessels. The immediate threat was over, but she knew their real work was just beginning. "Dr. Wright," she said, "I believe it's time to draft a new galactic charter, one based on cooperation rather than conquest, protection rather than predation." In the weeks that followed, representatives from dozens of species would gather on Earth to establish the Galactic Defense Alliance, with humanity at its center not as conquerors but as guardians. The galaxy had learned a simple but powerful truth. When innocents cried for help, humanity would answer with fire and fury sufficient to protect them, but also with the wisdom to build something better from the ashes of tyranny. The age of the Vorthak Empire was over. The age of galactic cooperation had begun.